We were injured in UAP event, and that's what makes the Rendlesham case unique for two reasons. Number one, the government admitted it happened. The event is real, it's documented. Myself and Adrian Bristenza were injured during the event and are receiving compensation from the Department of Defense.
Oh, in fact, that can't be aircraft. There actually is a large unidentified object circling the Earth at incredible speed.
Naturally, we are very curious to know where it is you come from.
For those that know and those that don't know, in the UFO world, there was an event in late December 1980 on the Twin Air Force bases or near them, RAF Bentwaters and RAF Woodbridge in Suffolk, England. Over a series of nights, something came down and interacted with military personnel. The best documented military interaction of UFOs arguably ever. Tonight we have John Burroughs, a central figure that was there for the whole series of events. Welcome, John.
Thanks for having me on.
So I figured we'd do this. You know, a lot of people know about this case. I certainly did. We're coming up on the 45th anniversary of the case next month,
Yeah,
I believe.
It'll be 45 years.
Yeah. But there's a whole group of people that have really entered into the interest in UFO subjects starting in 2017 with, you know, the New York Times article. I'm surprised because a lot of people don't know about the event. Having said all that, what were you doing when the day before this happened? What was your role on the base?
We were on a 6-3 shift, 3 swings, 3 mids. So the day before it would have been a midnight shift. I was working. So I worked 11 to 7. And then that night was Christmas Eve, and then Christmas Day, and then our last shift was Christmas night. So it was just, going to work and going home, sleeping and going back to work. Though the family I rented an apartment from actually had me up for Christmas dinner. So there was nothing spectacular going on. The base was Christmas Eve, Christmas Day. It was dead,
What was your role at the time on the base?
I was in law enforcement, security police. At the time, it was called security police. It's now called security forces. And at that point, they had 2 different divisions, law enforcement and security, that was clearly divided by FSCs and training and everything. Now, security forces falls under one big group, and you can branch out into law enforcement later, but you get trained in security first. But I was a law enforcement patrolman.
Okay, gotcha. And we'll just get into it. What happened that night?
It was we came on Christmas night at 11. It was, like I said, Christmas Eve was a little active. There was a lot of partying going on in the dorms. Christmas night, it was dead. That was on Woodbridge. Bentwaters was hopping on Christmas Eve. I don't know what, I think it was pretty dead over there, but Woodbridge was just ghost town. So it was a dead night. I mean, just getting through Christmas night. And about 3 o'clock, or about 2:30, my supervisor, who was new to the base, wanted to ride around together for a while, to go over some things. And so I parked my vehicle and parked it, and he met and picked me up, and we started driving around. We were driving down by the East Gate, and he saw some strange lights up in the air coming down into the forest. Got my attention and asked me if I'd seen anything like that before. I'd been there over a year and a half. I said no. We decided to go off the base because we weren't sure what to do, because there was something there, but we didn't know how we could describe it. So we actually left the base. We opened the East Gate, went down to the end of the road. It was about, I think, half a mile. It's been a long time, but we went to the end of the road where you could go left or right, and the forest started right across the road. And he kind of turned the car around, and I opened the door, and the lights were in the forest out in front of us, into the forest. You could see some lights into the forest, but the air was weird. It just felt really strange, and we really didn't tell anybody. We went off base, and at that point, we felt there was something going on, so we decided we better get back up to the gate, call it in. We did. The desk sergeant, I was a practical joker, didn't believe me at first, transferred me to CSC. They sent the security patrol down, and a supervisor for Woodbridge, and he saw the same things we were seeing. And that's when all the back channel stuff went on between CSC, radars, the shift commander got involved. And eventually the conclusion was, and again, I wasn't on any of these phone calls, it was just what I was told as we were going out, was that they felt maybe because it's something had been seen on radar out over the forest area where we saw the lights come down, that there was something may have crashed. So that was the only reason why we could go off base, because what was going on wasn't a direct threat to the base at that point. So the two security guys and I, because Steffens, my supervisor, stayed behind at the gate with the weapons, went out into the forest.
And then when you went out into the forest, what did you come up with?
Well, as we were going down into the forest, you could see the lights. The supervisor said that it was like they were playing a little bit of tricks with us, they were exactly and stuff. But we got as far as we could in the vehicle, dismounted on foot, and we started going towards the area where we were seeing the light still, which was in the forest itself. And at that point, again, it felt like at one point we got up on it and it seemed to be behind us. It was hard to keep up with it for, I don't know, several minutes, 15, 20 minutes. It's been a long time. But then all of a sudden we were coming down in through the forest and there was like a berm and we went up on the berm. And as we came up to the top of the berm, it wasn't a high berm, but it was a little bit of a berm. And all of a sudden there was the lights right in front of us and a big white light was there. It was like the forest lit up. And so we came down off the berm and then we were like in a line formation. So the security suit was up in front of me. I was in the middle and the brand new airman first night on flight was behind me. He first thought we were playing a trick on him, like he used to prank first night guys, but here we were out in the woods. So we hit the ground. So that's where things changed. The security suit said he got up, walked around it, put stuff in his notebook, saw glyphs, touched the glyphs, got a binary download, the whole thing. I just remember hitting the ground, the lights dimmed briefly, then they got bright again, and whatever it was went up above the trees and was shot out into the forest. The airman that was behind me did an interview at one time and said that we were getting close to it. I was still armed. I drew my weapon, and then whatever it was knocked us all out, and we woke up and it was gone. What I remember is we got up. It was out in front of us. There was a fence line that separated the forest from a farmer's field. And there was cottages below us. It used to be called the farmer's house, but it really wasn't. The farmer that owned the fields lived miles away. It was cottages down there that people rented. So we went out into the field, saw something down by the cottages, and then crossed the road into another field, saw something up in the sky again. And then we continued towards the coastline, got up close to the coastline, where at that point there was the North Sea below us and the lighthouse was there.
Okay. So when you got up on it, you really just saw this bright flash and hit the deck.
Yeah, there was a bright light. It was a white light. It was like the lights were there and it just got really bright and we hit the ground. All three of us hit the ground.
Gotcha.
That's about where everything changes.
Okay.
Everybody's story is different from the point we got right up on top of it until out the end.
Okay.
On the first night.
Right.
So
no, and again, people that know the story, there's not a million. There's different accounts, and then different people that weren't even there adding their 2 cents. And then,
well, yeah, the lighthouse has come up. There's been all kinds of things that have happened over the years. In fact, when I got sick, we go into that later, I did a full investigation. I was already starting to look into it before I got really sick, and we went over for the 30th anniversary. We went over there, and then right afterwards, I got really sick. So I was already looking into some stuff. And then afterwards, with all the stuff that went on with the government, the VA and everything, I really dug deep. So we could go into that. But yeah, you're right. Everybody, all the people piled on. The thing I can say about the event sometimes, because we get caught up in other things,
right,
is this. The event was kept secret till the News of the World story broke. Okay. There was some chatter that went downtown almost immediately. I can't remember the guy's name. He was inside the security police squadron. And he went downtown and he told 2 investigators that were I don't know, it would begin with a B. It was like MUFON, but something else. They were UFO people that investigated UFO science. So on New Year's Eve, he went down. He knew these two ladies, Dot Street and Brenda Butler, and he told them that we had an alien event at the base. So that's exactly what was used. That was interesting when Arrow did their report. They said a lot of the stuff that involved other things, they immediately spread the word around there were aliens involved to, keep people from really taking the serious story. So he told them it was aliens, and they started digging into it right away. But there was a cover up. They kept it quiet. They brought teams in from Langley. They investigated it. The rumor was they recovered a UFO, but there's a lot of proof that during this whole event was going on with the technology, because what most people don't know about the area outside the back gate at Woodbridge, that was there. They called the event British's Roswell.
Right.
So, but in reality, that was British's Area 51. But outside that gate, they had RAF Bowsey and they had Martlesham Heath. It was American and British. And Marconi was involved. They were testing SDI, and people want to argue that SDI wasn't around then. It was. It was already being in R&D phase. They were working on it, and it was being done right outside the back gate. There's also evidence through the investigations that we've done, whatever's going on at Montauk and with MK Ultra, which for sure was real, all that stuff was brought over to the UK when our Congress started getting involved, and the CIA said they disbanded the program and they tore up all the documents so no one could see what was really going on. So a lot of that got transferred over there. So they were working on SDI, which involved satellites, drones, lasers, all that. The actual area back there was, they developed a radar, and they actually developed radar through working on lasers, which they called the death ray. They had all kinds of projects they were working on and doing on. And on top of everything else, there was a sanctioned project going on. A guy by the name of Andrew Pike wrote a book about it. He was working through the university. I forget which one it was, but they were down there investigating what a UAP is. There was UAP activity that was there, and it was being investigated. Then our event happened, and they all got tied in together.
I see. So a lot of things collided there, and that's actually
a lot
happened.
of things.
Yeah,
a lot of things collided all at once.
Right,
Yes.
and that sounds like when you said you started to dig into it yourself over the years.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
when you found out a lot of these other points that were collision points as far as our technology and secret things that we're developing, but in parallel, the UAP event that you experienced and other events around it were also going on.
Right. There's areas around the world that have UAP activity,
Yeah.
which is not the classic UFO, alien, biological beings, and hardened craft. There's a lot of events that have been UAPs, and that's aerial phenomenon. It's not a craft. It's not biological beings, but a lot of the evidence supports the fact that these UAPs are actually real, as far as they're the life form.
Right.
They're the actual life form. And not only that, if you go to Project Condign, in the midst of all that, that was a secret report that was done by the UK government that got released in 2006, but a lot of it still was redacted and still is redacted on all the different things. But there were two things about it: that it clearly was real. It clearly could do things that they couldn't explain with physics and everything else. It should be weaponized, and the caveat was in the documents, it said that we were the Rendlesham people were exposed to UAP radiation.
That's the quote I saw from the Condign report.
Yes,
that
it was in there.
You
right.
were exposed to
but
radiation.
Here's the kicker. Here's the kicker to this. We used it in the settlement. Both Adrian Bustinza and I. We got compensated by the government for the event, which people want to say we did, but we did. But the kicker is that they knew about UAPs. They were studying UAPs. They were working on UAPs when we went out there. And it was clearly they realized that what we had an interaction with was what a UAP is. And the fact is that is all real. And that's part of what helped Adrian and I get our settlement. The government admitted that we were on duty because that was, you see, to get a settlement, which a lot of people don't understand, you have to show where you were injured by something in the line of duty. It doesn't have to be like an event, like you went out, got shot or blown up, or like in our case, a UAP. You could be drinking water, that was contaminated, the burn pits. But you just don't get VA disability unless you could tie exactly what it was that caused you to become ill and everything else. Both Adrian and our settlement was based on the Rendlesham Forest event. And Colonel Halt just did an interview with Ross Colcart, and he just admitted in that interview that we were clearly injured during the event.
A couple things popped up there. Number one, what you're saying and what is confirmed is you were compensated by causation of an event, a UAP interaction in Rendlesham Forest by the government, and they've acknowledged that was the event that caused you harm.
Right. And my attorney wrote a press release when I was the first to get the settlement, said it was by UAPs are real by de facto. Well, the government admitted that I was on duty. I was involved in an incident. The evidence was presented was it was a UAP incident. Never mind, you had the Halt memo that said we went out there and were involved in an incident and the lights. There was a tape that showed I was out there, and there was different things going on technology-wise that was presented to include a CIA guy gave them a document that supported, plus General Williams, he was actually a colonel at the time at the base, actually gave supporting documents to Senator McCain directly that supported what happened to us. So we were injured in UAP event, and that's what makes the Rendlesham case unique for two reasons. Number one, the government admitted it happened. They admitted it to CNN. The Halt memo was real, and people went out in the forest and had an encounter. Okay. Now, at that point in time, the memo said unexplained lights, but the Air Force did admit that the event took place. So now you had a known event. Then it broke in the news of the world. It was blown out of proportion, exaggerated. Sure. Things were said. Other things over the years have been blown out of proportion and exaggerated. But the event is real. It's documented. And then myself and Adrian Bristenza were injured during the event and are receiving compensation from the Department of Defense.
It's amazing.
Or Department of War now, excuse me.
Department
of War.
Good point of clarification. And so we have you, Adrian, the other gentleman that were there encountering this thing. And then you fast forward to some of your own investigating and getting your claim. What I want to know is everybody talks about December, the night that it happened to you, and then a couple nights later when Halt went out, when they were back, right?
And I was with Halt that night.
Yeah,
that was when all this stuff hit the fan.
Right, and that night. Did anything happen on the night in between?
Right, that was something that this whole thing was locked down by Halt for a long time. I mean, in fact, he didn't retire till the early 90s.
Yeah.
And I didn't retire till 2006, but I was in the reserves, so it was easier for me to get involved than it was on active duty. But Halt kept a lot of things tapped down. He at first claimed that Adrian and I weren't even involved. Then Georgina Bruni got a hold of the tape, cleaned it up, and you could hear my name on it, and you could hear Bristenza on it. So over the years, he's gone from we weren't involved to now not only has he said we were involved, we did meet up with his team. I did meet up, and I went forward with Bristenza, and we most likely had an encounter, and that we were injured by it. So he's changed a lot, but he kept the heavy hand on it for years. The very first show, the big one that came out was called what was it? God, there's been so many. It was what was the one with Robert Stack?
Oh, Unsolved Mysteries?
Yes. Yeah. Unsolved Mysteries was the first one to really put it in the limelight. And Halt was retiring. He was there. I was there. And they brought a bunch of people in. And Halt met with each individual one of them and got one of the guys that originally talked in CNN talking about how there was evidence given to the wing commander and he flew it to Germany. He got that guy not to even go on camera and leave. So Halt was clearly controlling the narrative from the very beginning going forward over the years. And it was tapped down, and it's taken years for all the things to come out.
Yeah.
But the event was real. It wasn't the lighthouse. But I will tell you, the lighthouse was involved.
How so?
The original radar, it's called the Black Tower,
Yeah.
that they invented, was tied into the lighthouse through an EM frequency system, and I can't remember the name of it. And they were all tied into the lighthouse, and the lighthouse beam was emitting EM frequencies into the forest.
Okay, so it affected the radar.
No, it was affecting the UAPs, the real UAP.
Oh, okay.
They were doing testing on the UAPs. The British government has admitted that I've got a FOIA that I did with them where they admitted to me that they've actually developed a weapon off of UAPs. They've been studying this. It involves plasmas, and they call it Earth lights, plasmas, whatever, but it's real. It's spelled out in the Condon report. But this is all the technology that they're going forward with, including if you go back and look at the hearings, one of the papers was submitted as evidence was a paper by Hal Puthoff that was metric phasing, which can create a time bubble, which will allow you to travel like Star Trek did, warp speed. There's all kinds of stuff involved in this, and all the people that over the years that have been working on exact technology, like Puthoff, Green, and all these guys, they're all tied all into this. And we're making leaps and bounds in technology because of the computing, quantum energies that we've learned how to make it small and compact. And now they're working on time dilation. DARPA just said that they may be able to create a time dilation bubble around individual soldiers sooner than later.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. So let me ask you this: everything you said is mind blowing, but
yeah.
On the night, the second night. Was there anything that happened the second night? Before?
The second night. Yeah, I was on break the first day, which would have been Friday morning. So I was off duty. I spent the night. I lived off base. Saturday morning, I woke up early and went up to the base, and I found out I got up on there before midnight shift. Got up on the desk because I wanted to read the. I went up there to read the blotter entry and report from our incident. Yeah, because we were at Woodbridge, and I never got back to Bentwaters. We went back to the CSC, turned in, went back out to the site after night one, and went home. So I wanted to see the reports, what they wrote about it. And I got up there, and the midnight shift guy said, "You're not going to believe it. They chased lights in the woods again." And one of the things that happened was the shift commander was on their way over when this was all going on. She had some kind of an encounter with some lights that went through her vehicle and shut it down. That has been confirmed. Some of the people that were involved said she actually got out and popped some rounds off at it. That has not been confirmed, right. But she clearly had an encounter, and not only did it shake her up, but she got relieved of duty and removed from the base.
Yeah, I'd heard a little bit about that story, and I know everybody focuses on your first night and then Halt with the tape recording, and you were out there too as well.
Right.
But the second night gets overlooked, and I know that.
Well, actually, if you want to know about the second night really well, I did a show with Linda Moulton Howe called Phenomenon Radio, and we did a whole show with all the people that were involved in the second night. We interviewed all the people that were involved, what they saw, how it started, and everything else. And it was a big event. And it's never gotten you're right, the traction of the first or the third night.
Yeah, but so this happened 3 nights in a row, and then walk me through. So that's the second night. What happens when you get up on day 3 before you went out with Halt and company?
Well, what happened was when I found out about night 2, I was on the base. I lived off base, so I went over to the dorm. I went over and had breakfast and went to the dorms. A couple of guys I worked with that were, they weren't directly involved in night 1, but they were on duty. I went to the dorm and said, "I can't believe this. Something just happened last night again." And they're both like, "What?" So we decided, I hung around all day on the base, and the one guy had a car. So we decided we were going to go out in the forest and see if we could figure out what was going on. It just didn't add up. I mean, when we came out of the forest on night 1, there's no way to explain what we saw, what happened. So we thought, well, we'll go back out there and we'll sit out there for a while and we'll see if we can figure something out. So by the time we got out there, all the stuff was going on with Halt's team. They already had teams out in the forest. Halt was out in the forest. And so got to the back gate, was allowed to go to the staging area. And eventually, when Halt was coming back, I met up with him. And that's when another light, or, the light started coming from the distance through the tree line towards us. And that's when he looked and I looked at it. We could see it. Plus, first before that, he was pointing to blue lights in the sky that were flying around, beaming lights down to the ground. And that's on his tape, too.
Yeah.
One of them came towards him and beamed a light down his feet. And people say that was all made up. Listen to the tape and listen to his voice. He's quivering when he says, "This is unreal."
I saw yellow tinge in it too. Weird. It appears to be maybe moving a little bit this way. It's brighter than it has been. Yellow? It's coming this way. It is definitely coming this way. Pieces of it are shooting off. There is no doubt about it. This is weird. To the left. Yeah, definitely moving left. Two lights. One light to the front, okay. One light to the left. Keep flashlights off.
Yep.
So here's you got a full lieutenant colonel out there who was a combat. Most people don't know this. He was a combat controller in Vietnam, so he knew how to deal with that stuff, and it totally blew him away. So we saw this coming towards us. So he let Adrian and I go forward, and we started going towards it. It started coming towards us, and then we started running towards it. And I was a little bit in front of Adrian. Somehow Adrian got knocked to the ground. Now, he has said in interviews that something knocked him to the ground and held him. And I went a little bit farther forward because we were real close together. And it came over the top of me. I went into it and it disappeared. I was gone for several minutes.
And that's on the third night.
That's on the third night.
Because a lot of people get it mixed up that on the first night when you and Pennington came upon it, that's when you were gone for a while.
Pennington said the same thing. I disappeared. Yeah. But he didn't really go into the detail like Bustinza did.
Okay.
Bustinza and Adrian and I were the ones that get the settlement. So what's that tell you?
Right. Well, what do you think about that? If you're missing time and you're taken inside a craft and you wouldn't know it, but did you, how close was this light or craft to you and Adrian at the time?
We were right on top of it. And again, craft is a way to try to explain it. But through my studies, UAPs are not craft. They are lights. They are energy form. They're like a plasma energy form. It's the easiest way to explain it. But they create their own world, their effect, like a time dilation. I'm pretty sure what happened to me, Adrian had him graze him. He was on the ground and said it went over his hands. But I went into it. So I went into a different, the easiest way to describe it is a dimension. It took me somewhere else. It's slow. I went in probably, the best we can tell, I'm not a scientist, is usually when you go into a time dilation bubble, it slows down. It doesn't speed up.
Gotcha.
And that's why their development for weapon systems, they're working on it for aircraft and tanks. I've heard of tanks already there. The problem is, if you want to go back to when it really started, it was the Philadelphia experiment. Okay, and there's a generator that I've been in a battle with the MOD for months. And the initial FOIAs were, we have too much information to give to you because it's going to take too much time and money. Narrow the questions down. And each time I would, they came up with the same excuse. So I narrowed it down directly to this particular generator and the effects. And then they came back and said they didn't have anything on file, which is not true, because that generator was involved in our event and it was classified by Thatcher right afterwards. But it's called the Marx generator, and it's based off of Tesla's work, and they've modified it over the years. In fact, one of the things that gets me in trouble with ufology, but it's true. This is that Robert Salas event that when they did the Arrow report, and they said it was us. It probably was, because it's fact. The Marx generator and the Sage radar, which worked together on this stuff, was tied directly to his launch site. And they never saw aliens. They never saw craft. They saw lights, which are what a UAP is. Okay, it's not what a standard UFO is. And a lot of the nuclear events have always been tied to lights, not
nuts and bolts craft, but like a glowing,
most of them have,
some kind of glowing light. So when you saw that plasma did you recognize the moment you stepped into it, or did it just kind of go?
No, I just, both times, first night and the third night, I remember getting close to something. And then the first night, I didn't remember anything until it went up and back. The second night, I just remember I was standing there and Bustinza was behind me looking at me and stuff. So I had no memory of either night when I got close to it.
Gotcha.
What happened once I got close to both times.
And so both of you suffered effects. How long after that event did you start to get some what you felt were health-related effects from this?
Well, I didn't feel very good right afterwards. I had some issues, some issues, but it wasn't until the summer I'd left the base. I PCS the base, normal time. I didn't get hit away until after News of the World. So a lot of people mix that up. I stayed the 2 years at the base. Now, there are rumors other people left the base after the event, including Tamplin did. That's a fact. She left the base. She didn't stay on the base.
And she was the one in the second night that had the light stopper vehicle.
She was the second lieutenant shift commander that had an interaction.
Yep.
So I got back to the States and I got really sick. I was stationed in Indiana. My parents lived in Illinois. It was like a 2-hour drive. So once a month, at least, I go home to see my parents, hang out with my friends. And I went home that weekend and I got sick. And I couldn't, you just can't call in sick to the military.
Right.
So I called the base and they said, I'm really sick. What do? I don't think I can get back in time for duty the next day. So go to the emergency room and they'll check you out and they can write up that you were sick. So when I went into the emergency room, he found a heart murmur. And people say I had it before I came in. Now, I've got the proof I didn't. I've got the physical. I had no heart issues coming in. You couldn't even get in the Air Force with the heart murmur.
Yeah.
And so that's when the medical issues started, documented. And so I was off. I stayed a couple more days extra at home based off what the emergency room. They said I had a type of flu, but they found the heart murmur. So when I got back to the base, they brought in a specialist from Wright-Patterson right away. And he checked me out it was like a clinic there. They could keep you there for observation, but they didn't have a hospital. So he immediately checked me out and sent me to Wright-Patterson the next day for a whole bunch of tests. And so I got up there in the morning, did all the tests. In the afternoon, he came back and said, "You have a heart murmur, mitral valve prolapse." He goes, "We're going to continue to monitor it." But that's all he told me. And it was all documented records. Then I had eye issues. That was all documented. All this stuff that I had afterwards relate back to encountering a UAP, but it was all documented. But so when the time came when I got sick, again in 2011, early 11, my doctor, they couldn't figure out why I was having all the heart issues. They knew the prolapse was there, but what the prolapse showed didn't relate to how sick I was. So they wanted to see the initial reports. And that's when we filed requests for them and they were denied. So all my medical records were denied. I've never had access to any of them. But particularly the area with all the testing was done, my heart, my eyes, and everything else, that is all classified.
So they took, if I got this straight, and you can line me up here, your time spent in England, was that your whole experience there classified? So when you go to file a claim, they don't honor it because they say you weren't even there.
Yeah, that's something that I left out. When I got into the system, started going through the VA for disability treatment and everything else, it started with Kyle. McCain ended up getting involved. The initial denial of everything for the disability came that they said everything about me from 79 to 82 was expunged. There was no record of me being in the Air Force from 79 to 82, no medical records, no anything. And we were able to eventually McCain's office got around it and they could prove that I was in. But originally, their initial thing was they gave a DD Form 214 that wasn't even a regular DD Form 214. And they gave it and said, I didn't come in until 82. So not only did they not let me have any access to my medical records, they even claimed I wasn't in from 79 to 82. And
I heard somewhere that they actually classified your security personnel, and they classified your history there in England, and that doesn't happen. That happens to like CIA operatives or people like that.
Well, it can happen. Okay, first of all, there's people that have been involved in things that would have no idea. I had no idea my stuff was locked down like that until I got sick and tried to get access to it. If you're involved in anything that's considered classified, whatever that involvement is locked down.
Okay.
So if you get sick, you get injured, you get treated, you're there, you're involved, that stuff you can't gain access to. There's a classified records section that we found out about. It's down in Jackson, Mississippi, and all that stuff is kept there. And people have always said, even in that hearing, the citizens' hearing, like all the Congress people there, only 2 people knew about that. It was interesting. One guy, it was district of in Langland, and the other guy was the one that was involved in MK Ultra. He was a senator that read the MK Ultra papers on the floor of Congress. And they both knew what I was talking about. And so if you get involved in these things, they're locked down, including alphabet soup people and everybody else. Any military personnel that are involved in these things have issues. You just saw they've come out with that group in Area 51 that have gotten sick, and the government's denying everything. And that's how they treat whatever you're involved with that's classified is how it's treated.
And how did you get McCain involved?
Started with Kyle, and I couldn't get my records, so they requested them. They were told they weren't where they belonged. That's what the aide said. She had a lot of experience in Agent Orange. So then she went back and did another thing. I don't know what she did, but that's when she sent me back a letter saying my records were classified. And that's when she said, you have to go file for disability because you'll force their hand with the records on your claim.
Gotcha.
And that's when we did that, and that's when they denied I was even in. So then Kyle didn't run for re-election, so it got handed over to McCain's office. And then all this stuff went on. Because we actually, when we proved I was in, they actually were going to settle with me. And then they told me to withdraw my appeal, and they would take care of it. And then they came back and said, thank you for closing the case. It's now closed. And that's when McCain personally got involved. And he told them, either this gets taken care of or I'm going to open hearings on what went on. And then within the next few months, everything got settled and taken care of.
How long was that journey? It was John Kyle and John McCain, right? That you started with Kyle and McCain. How long was that journey?
Okay, it started in 2012, and I had my settlement by 2015. That just never happens with the VA, especially on a case that was almost it was over 30 years old.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of pressure put on. Never mind the CIA guy that showed up that supported the fact that he knew about what happened to us, and he wrote a letter to the VA DOD and told them what caused my injuries, what was involved. And at the point, he gave it to my attorney, so it was locked down between him, my attorney, and me. And the attorney, he actually, said he was my doctor at that point, and he was going to testify. We were going to go to court, civilian court, and force the government to admit my records were classified. And we were going to do that. But when he showed up, then all of a sudden, after that letter showed up, they gave me my surgery. And then about a year later, I got my settlement. So we didn't end up having to take it to court. But we've never been able to get the government to put in writing anywhere my records are classified, other than what the aide said.
Okay.
They were classified.
Gotcha.
But they've admitted that I was on duty. I was injured during that event.
Yeah. You'd mentioned that. So how's your health now?
Well, I have a congestive heart failure. I'm still an AFib. I have a pacemaker defibrillator, and I have a artificial mitral valve. So I'm doing as best as I can. But, it's not terrible, and I'm grateful for all the help I got, and I'm doing better than most. But I'm not, it's screwed up my life. My health, I can't go out and do what a normal person my age can do anymore. So.
And that's it occurred to me when you and I were going back and forth, and I was thinking about your situation, and I thought, we're coming up on 45 years. Yep. And 45 years of you going through all you've went through. A lot of people have the unsolved mysteries image of you had this fantastical encounter one night, and there it is. And you got this great story to tell. Well, 45 years later, you just talked about a whole journey you went on of deep diving
Right.
into looking behind the scenes, what was really going on, the multiple things going on, the health problems that have been plaguing you for decades, your records being classified, not being able to get disability, not being able to get health treatment. It sounds like something you wouldn't want to wish on anybody.
No, you don't. And the last thing is that I was invited to come up and meet with the Gang of Eight, the Aero Committee, other members of Congress. This new movie coming out, they wanted me in it. And I refused all of it because they're not serious about disclosure. They're not. They claim they are. Ufology people think that disclosure's right around the corner. It's not. This is all wrapped up in weapon systems. All you have to do is go look at the main people that have been doing this for decades. I mean, Hal Puthoff, do you know his background?
Yes.
You heard of Project Stargate, right?
Right.
He ran that project. It's part of what they're working on now in the going forward with technology. So all I'm getting at is they're not going to release what they have because of that alone, never mind other reasons. So, and plus, I'll be straightforward. I always get in trouble for this. We're not ready for that. Everybody thinks we're ready for the truth. No, we're not.
That was a question I was going to ask you. And I ask a lot of people that have either been quote unquote whistleblowers or they've investigated it. It seems like you've got a lot of these people in congressional hearings, and the crowd of people that are coming forward, right, are people that are saying, I worked on a government program that investigated UAP phenomena. We butted up against a legacy program and we couldn't get, they talked about retrievals, they talked about biologics. We couldn't crack through that door. So the only way to do it is congressional oversight and mass public exposure to this. And people think because we've had 3 congressional hearings that we're closer to ever than disclosure. But here you're sitting going, ain't never going to happen. Like that.
Let's take that last hearing. Do you remember? I can't think of his name now. He was the guy that worked on these projects. He was the one guy that his credentials are real. I forget his name, but he was being questioned by the Congress people, and he said, "Here's the facts. Number one, what you want to know, I can't tell you unless we go in a skiff. But number two, even if we go in a skiff, I still won't be able to tell you because you don't have the clearances to know." There's only a select few people in Congress, which is basically the Gang of Eight, that have the clearance level to know what's going on in these SAP programs.
Yep.
All these other guys, they're just pawns. I don't care. It just is a joke. It's a running joke. I'm not saying they're not serious about wanting to know, but they're never going to get a sniff of what's really going on.
You know, I've been saying that, just being the everyman, I'm trying to figure out, because I get friends that know I'm into the subject and interview people, and they're like, well, why don't they have these hearings, why don't they just roll out, open the vault and show us everything? I said, do you realize that the people that are in the public-facing congressional hearings, they're going to ask them questions, they're going to reply, I can't tell you that, but here's what I can tell you. And then they're going to ask another question, and they're going to reply, I'd have to be in a skiff to answer that. And then when they get into a skiff, there's only so much they can say. So it's almost like, I guess, what's the end game?
It's a very important fact that people don't understand. And I've gotten in arguments with people, like, for example, I'll talk to you about a little interaction I had with David Grush recently. But anything that's classified falls under the gaining authority that has the classification. So if you were the guy in charge of the project, control the project, the access and everything else, and I work for you, I cannot talk to anybody about that unless you give me the permission. The president, Congress can order you to release it, but you don't have to release it. They just came out with that on the Epstein files. The gaining organization that holds whatever documents that are sitting there, and there could be different organizations that have different documents, have the final say on whether these records are declassified or they remain classified and redacted. That's how it works. It doesn't mean it's right, but that's how it works. So they can order whatever they want, And it takes a committee head, first of all, to subpoena. That's another thing. This is a subcommittee doing these hearings. Comer's not running those hearings. It's a subcommittee that doesn't even have subpoena power, okay? So nobody there can talk about anything for two reasons. One, if you don't have the clearance, I can't talk to you about it. Number two, if I don't have the permission to talk about it, I can't talk to you either. And it's only up to the agency that holds these documents and whoever runs the program to whether they're going to brief you on it or not. So they're not going to do it. And there's two things. I talked to Grish and they want me to go up and testify still. I said, yeah, go to the VA, go to the Department of War and get them to admit my records classified. Because if you do that, besides my documents that I showed, I can prove I was injured, that they said I was injured in the line of duty, but they've never ever confirmed whether or not what happened to us was classified or what, on my part is classified. Now you have a smoking gun. And none of them have done that. They will not cross, or if they tried, they got told stand down.
Right.
They've been told stand down. And that's the thing about this. It's not going anywhere. Robert Bigelow was the most honest guy in the world, way back with Knapp, right before the 17 event happened. He said, we're going to get confirmation that something's going on, and that's as far as it's ever going to go. We're never going to get disclosure, but the confirmation will help us work on this technology and move it forward. He was honest.
It sounds
and
accurate,
that's what's
too.
been going on. And that's what's been going on.
And that's about right. So it's kind of a dog and pony show. And
yeah. Well, actually, I think some will want to know. They're arrogant enough to think that they have the power to get answers, and they don't. They do not have the power to do that.
So let me ask you this. How long do you think this will, now that everybody says we're on the cusp of it and the congressional hearings are at a fever pitch, how long do you think they keep going that route and getting the door slammed in their face before they go a different route, or we go back to just kind of giving up altogether?
I don't know if they'll ever give up altogether, but the point is it's all right, let's go to the Epstein stuff. They're going to release more documents, but they're not going to release certain things that are classified for whatever reason, right? So even if they let some stuff out, the bread and butter is going to never see the light of day. There's a case that most people don't even know about. Have you ever heard of a lawyer by the name of Peter Gersten?
I believe I have.
He was a UFO lawyer, and
That's right.
He forced the government to admit they had stuff on UFOs. But when they actually released it to him, it was all blacked out.
Right.
Every single document was blacked out. He took it to the Supreme Court, but they didn't hear it. The Supreme Court wouldn't hear it. But he finally got the government, he was a really good lawyer, to admit that there were documents on UFOs that existed. But every single document was blacked out.
How long ago did he do that?
That was over at least 20 to 30 years ago.
Yeah, because I remember that's an older, that was, and then you have Sheehan, right? What do you think about him?
I don't know. I mean, sometimes he's okay. Sometimes he goes off the deep end with grays and reptilians and all this other stuff. It doesn't help the case because, honestly, the only way you can move forward is with facts. And if you present a case on factual documentation, because like even some of these videos they've released have been discredited.
Yeah.
And why are we releasing these documents? I mean, the last one they released, they said was a weather balloon, and the guy that released it even admitted it hadn't been vetted. He just didn't know what it was, but they couldn't explain it. So here's an example of what a UAP is. Well, wait a minute. It took about a half an hour, 45 minutes for people to realize that's probably not what it was. But, I mean, it needs to be fact-based. But see, that's never going to happen because the alphabet soup agencies, Department of War, and all these defense contractors, which most people don't realize, the majority of this stuff is outside the realm of Department of War. It's all tied up in contract companies, and you're not even going to be able to get an answer. I'm still waiting on the Department of Energy's answer 6 months ago on my questions, and they said it's going to be a long time. So They just got this all locked down, and I guess the only way something could ever break would be is whatever we're dealing with shows itself,
Yeah.
and it's irrefutable.
Yeah, because it also brings into the question. Let's just play what if. Like, what if we did recover a craft, right? An actual craft with beings, and it was recovered somewhere, not on government-owned property, but on private land. And let's say that was Roswell, and let's say that was 80 years ago. What the legal implication for the government to say, well, we're going to take that vehicle and that material, and now we own it, and then we're going to parse it out to the Lockheed Martins and a few others, and only have them kind of a monopoly on certain government contractors to reverse engineer. If it were to ever come out that we did that, there'd be a huge legal implication for them. You talk about the weaponry and the weaponization and the technology, like that's a secret that'll never get released because of the gravity of what that means, but also the legal implication too. I mean, what do you think about that?
The government can do whatever they want. They have high-powered, the best attorneys. They have different, most people don't realize the rights they gave up under the Patriot Act. They have all the arrows, and they can do what they want with it. And there's really nothing that anybody can do about it. They can classify whatever they want.
Yeah.
Once it's classified, no one has access to it. And I'm not arguing that it should or shouldn't be classified. But I honestly think one of the reasons why we're never going to see it is because I'm coming to this conclusion more and more. Whenever we have an encounter, we're in a different dimension. And when you come back, you're never going to be remembered exactly what happened, and you're not going to be able to prove it. Never mind if you go into Condyne and some of what these scientists have said. When you have an interaction with this, it affects how you remember it, how you see it, and everything else. To include, it can affect you. You may look, it may be one thing, but your mind can only accept it as something else.
Right, and therefore your mind's your recall, and if the recall has been altered, how can you stand on that or even try to?
Right. No, that's a fact. And I mean, but they're never going to, because there's always a race. I mean, they just said in this, what is it, the name of the movie?
The Age of Disclosure?
Age of Disclosure. Yeah, one of the scientists say that whoever learned totally and completely figures out this technology will own the next 100 years, just like we did in the nuclear. Okay, so there's been a parallel project running for years with people like Puthoff, Green, Davis, all these guys involved that have been the next Manhattan Project. Mm-hmm. They've been working on this forever. And I'm not sure why they've come out, maybe because one of the things I was told by somebody in government was every year there's only so much money they can fake, right, for DOD. So they have to allot it, and exotic technology never gets the amount of money they need to really make this go forward. But also, they haven't been able to get the technology fine-tuned enough to make it work consistently. But I think we're on the cusp of that. I think quantum was the big leap.
Yeah.
The quantum computing, the satellites, and the energy. Now they can make these little mini nuclear powered plants and all that. I think the energy and the computing power was the biggest problem, and AI too, because that's what I was going to tell you about the tanks. They've been working on it. Puthoff's worked on it. You know what happens? They can't put anybody in it because biologically we can't withstand the time dilation. And that's probably why they've had interest in me. Somehow I went into one and I survived it. But it goes in, and the computing power and stuff can't keep up. So let's say you want to go from like one street to the next. They activate it, and it ends up 5 miles somewhere else. Because you've got to be able to compute the craft within the bubble to get it to end up where you want it to be. And they've had issues with all that.
And that sounds like I've heard that before. That
Right.
To in a sense almost time travel or teleport, that they're off, right? They don't have it fine tuned. That they can do it, but they can't do it with accuracy or consistency.
Right. You don't. That's why I say it goes back to the Philadelphia experiment, and that's where the Marx generator first made its appearance.
Gotcha.
That was the original Marx generator that was used off of Tesla, and the Tesla stuff is all the wacky, exotic stuff that they're working on. Never mind the natural phenomenon that exists. It exists in Rendlesham Forest. It exists evidently in Skinwalker.
Yeah.
I guarantee you it exists out in Sedona. Yes. I lived there for 2 years. I had some serious, interesting encounters there. There's something there in Sedona.
I grew up in Arizona, so we would go there too. You can feel it when you get up there.
Yeah, but I had stuff happen out there in the West and past the time stupid and everything else that was bizarre.
So let me ask you this. I wanted to, as kind of a follow-up to all this experience you've had, a lot of people talk about almost like when they encounter something like you did, that they have paranormal fallout, for lack of a better word, over the years afterwards. Have you had anything that maybe even haven't told anybody, or you have told somebody, that you would chalk up to your encounter that night in Rendlesham, or those nights that you feel like has followed you over the years?
I can't say it's followed me because what Nolan and Green were interested in, this is how they laid it on the line. They feel that certain people and bloodlines trace back in time that may deal with what we're encountering. And then they feel the big question was, when you have an encounter, is it because of that? Or when you do, does it modify you? And they never were clear on where I stood. Okay. They got my stuff to when they did the VA heart surgery, I found out. Then he came back later and got a saliva sample. He wanted to put me in that 100-person program. And then he did some DNA testing on myself and my son. But they feel that, I think, and again, I don't like how they talk about my case, because Nolan's been disingenuous. He did come and try to get my DNA, but I never gave it to him. They got it through my surgery.
Right.
And then I gave it to Green to put off.
Right.
But the thing is that when I went to Skinwalker, we had stuff happen out there.
Yeah.
When I lived in Sedona, I went out and did you ever go up to Bradshaw Ranch?
Yes.
Out in that area is where all the stuff happens.
Right.
And I went out there on 2 different occasions, and a bunch of stuff happened both nights.
Like what type of stuff?
Stuff was in the sky everywhere, flying around, coming down at us. At Skinwalker, there was freaking out the 2 guys that were with me. It was coming down. So the one guy that's with me, Toby Martinez, thinks that I'm a magnet.
Yeah.
For him.
And that's what I was driving at, was the fact that it seems like it's you're picked somehow, whether it's your bloodline or something, but it's not.
Well, if you
random.
go off of what no one else guys say, it's a bloodline.
Okay. And
it goes back to ancient times.
And as a point of clarification, just for the viewers, Nolan did claim that he got a sample of your blood, but he actually got it through the VA, right?
Well, yeah, because here's how it went. Him and Kelleher, Green met with my attorney and I in Sedona, and he tried to sell me on doing an MRI on the brain and DNA. I wouldn't do the DNA because I said, how are you going to test this and what are you looking for? He said, there's only 2 labs in the world that could do it, blah, blah. So eventually I just said, how would I know if what you're telling me is true or not anyway? So I declined the DNA. We're going to talk more about the MRI. But the next thing you know, he called Pat back that evening and sent Kelleher and Nolan down and met with us in Flagstaff the next day. And I refused. So they went back. So he brought a lobotomist and everything. They were going to take the blood. So he didn't get it. Then when I did the surgery, I found out, well, there were 2 things. Alexander told me they did it, but there's stuff that I got proof of, that there was a DOD doctor following me around everywhere. They were taking all my tissue, my samples, and he had blood drawn from me that went off site. So that's when they got the initial DNA, the blood and the tissue. They got, not only did they get blood, but they got tissue, including the valve that was damaged. And then the second time is I gave a saliva sample to Green. Now, he could say that he got it through Green, but I gave it to Green. I didn't give it
to Nolan. Okay. Well, let me ask you this for the last part here, before we move on to what you've been doing and some of your creativity, which I think is really cool. What do you think you stepped into that night in Rendlesham in your mind?
Time dilation bubble.
And non-human intelligence?
Yeah, you could say that. Here's where it gets real sticky, and this is what makes me nervous too. There clearly is an intelligence. Condyne admits it. This UAP is intelligent. It does things. And the question is under a hypnosis I did way back in the late 80s to try to remember if I could remember what happened when I got into it or close to it. It says that's the life form.
I don't believe it. Look how small it is. It's just there, though. It's like it's calling to us to come to it. We've got to go to it. It's telling us to come to it. We can feel it. Yes, can you feel it? Yes, I can feel it. We've got to get to it. We've got to get to it. We've got to know what it wants. It wants us. It wants us. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Spread out. We're getting into some more woods again. How can it move? How can it?
And so it clearly is a life form. The question is been brought up, is it just us from the future?
Right.
And we evolved to that, or is it something else that's here? Because if you remember what Bigelow said on 60 Minutes, he said they're here. They've been here forever. But he didn't say it was biological beings. He just said they've been here. That is clearly, I believe, what he was talking about. That is clearly what they've been studying. If you go back to Green and Mirage Man, he said that what we've been fed is not real. What eventually we will find out a lot of what really has taken place, and it won't be as serious as they're coming to eat us or anything like that. But it still goes back to bloodlines, and then you could go back. Is there ancient stuff that came here and was seeded, and they're not 100%? Their evolution was different than the rest of humanity.
Yeah. No. Great.
That's all really sticky stuff.
Yeah.
That they will never clarify. Yeah. They always go around the fringes. They drop little hints and stuff. But at the end of the day, there could be a bloodline that was created that can interact with UAPs. And possibly, because they wanted to study the brain, it could be that leads me to wonder if it's how we evolve later, or because the mind, we only use 10%, about 10% of what we can. So there's a lot of what ifs, and these guys aren't making it clear on what it actually is or isn't.
It poses so many questions, and I mean, it's mind blowing. Well, let's do this before we wrap. I want to give you a chance to talk a little bit about some of the new stuff you've got coming out and your own creativity. The floor is yours. Let us know what you got going on.
Right. I've got a book that just came out. It's available. You can order it on Amazon. It's called Veritas Obscura Echo Protocol, and it's called True Lies, and it's part of it's Latin. It's True Lies, and it goes into some of what happened to us that I've never talked about because no one would believe me. It was just like when I dealt with Green and those guys. Everything went on behind the scenes and was kept quiet, and they said they never were going to go public with it. Then Green went on the top secret and talked about what my injuries were and everything and said it was real. I was tied to SAP programs and all that. Then they did Annie Jacobson's book where they talked about some of the DNA and stuff. So it was all supposed to be kept quiet. So I never said anything, partly because no one probably believed it anyway. So then it was made public. But there's even more that went on that still hasn't been made public. So I've tied it into this book. And we've been doing it. It's a 22-chapter book. We've been putting it on KJR every week in animation and stuff. But now the book's out and it's available on Amazon. But it ties in to that we're being fed a bunch of half-truths. Things are being left out. We're not being told the truth all the time and everything else. And including, it's in people that understand the case will like it. It's a 22-part series, but you can read the book. And then shortly, hopefully in early December, I'm going to have called Project Rendlesham Crossing the Thresholds. And it's going to go into everything that's happened to me and all the possibilities of the weapons that have been developed or are being developed, what's going on, the interactions I have with these people, and everything else. And it's going to set the record straight, because so many times it just gets totally twisted, turned around, and is not factual on what happened. So it's going to be laid out exactly what happened. And I think the hardest thing for people to understand, they just do not understand how far advanced we are, and the ramifications of the power that the people that have this technology have over us and what they can do to us.
Wow. Well, I did order your new one, and so I'm waiting for that to get here. That just started, I think, last week. It just came available on Amazon.
Right. A couple days, 3 days.
Yeah, looking forward to the next one. So we'll definitely.
It has a message. It has a message. And interesting enough, just real quick on this, I wrote this in the spring, and it involves an object coming toward us like 3i Atlas. And this is before 3i Atlas ever came out. It was kind of bizarre and stuff. So it follows the line of what Rendlesham could mean, what it means, what Nolan, Green, Put Off, all these guys have told me, what they've insinuated and stuff. And it ties into a message that culminates on the 45th anniversary in Rendlesham Forest.
I think that's a great way to take us out, man. But keep me posted. I appreciate you. You were sending me segments of your animation, so I kind of went through all those, and now I'm looking forward to the book. And I'd love to catch up with you again soon. Anything?
Right. I'll make sure you get. Once you get the book, you'll have a lot of questions. This is it for me, and what I mean by it, I'm not saying I'll never have to go up and testify, but I don't think they're going to ever crack the code to get me up there. They're not going to get the government to tell them what they want to know about Rendlesham. And there is rumors that, that second Arrow report that hasn't come out.
Right.
Part of it, they may talk about Rendlesham in it. They haven't said for sure. But I think Rendlesham's so wrapped up, and I think Green was honest about that in his Buff Top Secret and SAP programs and stuff, that you're never going to get a straight answer what happened in Rendlesham. But once you read that book, I'd be happy to come back on and talk about something.
Let's do it. We'll make it a date, man, for sure. I appreciate your time, and I know you don't do a lot of interviews, so I'm honored that you took some time with me today.
Right. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
All right, man. Thanks, John.